Oh, you want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
Cross your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Welcome, Scream Queens, Kings, and Things. So whether you're screaming at movies or the real life stuff, I'm your host, Jenica Olin. This is my 58th episode, and my theme of the month is Justice in January, where Black horror takes revenge and teaches us lessons that colonizers would like us to forget. In today's movie, we're taking a look at the projects and how communities like Cabrini-Green were built into a myth about a group of people where anyone outside of Cabrini-Green is afraid to even drive past it. This fear isn't fueled by an urban legend, though. It's fueled on racism, segregation, and poverty. The Cabrini-Green Housing Project in Chicago, Illinois Housing Authority managed housing projects located on the city's near North Side neighborhood. The project was authorized by the Housing Act of 1937, which called for the construction of public housing as a part of the effort to eliminate slums in major U.S. cities. The Francis Cabrini homes, completed in 1942, was the first major public housing project in Chicago, and the first section of what would eventually be called the Cabrini-Green Project. Its 586 units provided residence for soldiers temporarily stationed in Chicago during World War II, and placement housing for those who had formerly lived in the Little Hell neighborhood. The community demolished to allow construction of this project. Initially, the Francis Cabrini homes had a quota of African American residents. That quota was abandoned after the African American population in Chicago nearly doubled in size between 1940 and 1950. And because white Chicagoans remained adamantly opposed to integrated housing in their neighborhoods, with the passage of the 1949 Housing Act, which approved another wave of slum clearance and new public housing construction, we got the Cabrini extension. A high rise of 1,921 units was authorized. That project was completed in 1958, followed by the nearby William Green homes, another high-rise building with 1,099 units, which was opened in 1967. All three projects became known as Cabrini-Green and were the first example of high-rise public housing primarily for the African-American poor in Chicago. So, by what should be no one's surprise, by 1968, public housing through the city of Chicago was predominantly African American. With high crime and unemployment, Cabrini-Green, along with other housing projects in the city, came to symbolize failure of the city government in Chicago to resolve the problems of the concentrated and isolated urban African American poor. In 2011, the last remaining high-rise of Cabrini-Green Housing Project was demolished. Over the years, the property, which opened in 1942, gained a notorious reputation around the world for being a haven of violence, drugs, gangs, and other criminal activities. While the project's real-life history weaves its way into the narrative of Candyman, it only makes sense that Bernard Rose would want to shoot there, which he did. But in order to gain permission to shoot there, he had to agree to cast some of the residents as extras. He says, "I went to Chicago on a research trip to see where it could be done. And I was shown around by some people from the Illinois Film Commission. And they took me to Cabrini-Green. And I spent some time there, and I realized that this was an incredible area for a horror movie because it was a place of such palatable fear. And rule number one, when you're making a horror movie, is set it somewhere frightening. And the fear of the urban housing project, it seemed to me, was actually totally irrational because you couldn't really be in that much danger. Yes, there was crime there, but people were actually afraid of driving past it. And there was such an aura of fear around the place that I thought that was really something interesting to look into, because it's the sort of kind of fear that's at the heart of modern cities. And obviously, it's racially motivated, but more than that, it's poverty motivated. Bernard Rose was inspired by a real-life article, Murdered Through the Mirror, about a woman named Ruthie Mae McCoy being murdered in the projects. Her killer came through the mirror, like in the movie. He used the name Ruthie for Ruthie Jean and McCoy as Anne-Marie's last name as a homage. Today, I will be covering the 1992 film The Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose, written by Clive Barker and Bernard Rose, starring Virginia Madsen, Xander Berkeley, and Tony Todd. The estimated budget of this film was $6 million, and the estimated gross was almost $26 million. The tagline for this movie, we dare you to say his name 5 times. Some quick facts about this film. The bees were bred specifically for this movie. They needed to make sure that the bees were only 12 hours old so that they looked like mature bees, but their stinger couldn't be powerful enough to do any real damage. While investigating one of Candyman's crime scenes, Helen and Bernadette discovered that the design of the apartment's medicine cabinet made it possible point of entry for an intruder. That was not a made-up piece of horror movie fiction. While researching the film, Bernard Rose learned that a series of murders had been committed in Chicago in that very way. Virginia Madsen had to get up close and personal with those bees, a fact that almost forced her to pass on the role. She says, when Bernard Rose first asked me to do the role, I said, well, I can't. I'm allergic to bees, she told Horror News Network. He said, no, you're not allergic to bees. You're just afraid. So I had to go to the UCLA and get tested because he didn't believe me. I was tested for every kind of venom. I was far more allergic to wasps. So he said, we'll just have paramedics there. It'll be fine. You know, actors will do anything for a paycheck. So fine, I'll be covered with bees. Virginia Madsen was hypnotized and given a trigger phrase on set for her scenes with Candyman. Madsen grew increasingly uncomfortable with this method, so she asked for it to be canceled. Bernard Rose expressed interest in Clive Barker's story, The Forbidden, and Barker agreed to license the rights. Where Barker's story revolved around themes of the British class system in contemporary Liverpool, Rose chose to refit the story to Cabrini-Green public housing development in Chicago, and instead focus on the themes of race and social class in inner city United States. With plainclothes law enforcement on their side, Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen went into the buildings of Cabrini as part of researching their roles, a useful yet distressing experience for both actors. In addition to agreeing to cover his face in buzzing insects, Tony Todd signed on for a shot in which Candyman spews live bees out of his mouth. When Helen is seen talking to Jake at Cabrini-Green, you can see the shadow of the gates on her face, resembling honeycombs, therefore foreshadowing that her face would be covered in bees. The Rottweiler being gruesomely beheaded off screen may have been inspired by the fact that Jeffrey Dahmer once beheaded a dog and mounted its head on a stick when he was a teenager, which is very disturbing. If you're new here, each episode will have an intro, brief synopsis of the movie, an analysis of the film. Spoiler alert, I spoil the shit out of this movie. Let's set the scene with the synopsis of the movie.
Have you ever heard of Candyman? If you look in the mirror, you say his name 5 times.
In cities everywhere,
Candyman?
they whisper his name.
Right. Candyman.
It's just a story.
Candyman?
Candyman.
Just a ghost story.
Candyman.
Helen Lyle is an affluent young woman who is working with her good friend, Bernadette, a master's thesis involving modern folklore. Her husband, Trevor Lyle, is a university professor. Helen and Bernie have been interviewing numerous people about various urban legends. One young woman tells them a story about Candyman, a mythical being who has a hook instead of a hand. The legend goes that Candyman will appear behind you if you say his name 5 times while looking in the mirror. Clara dares Billy to repeat Candyman's name 5 times in front of the mirror. Billy only repeats it 4 times, but when she's left alone in the bathroom, Clara repeats the name a 5th time. Then she turns off the light, and right behind her, Candyman appears and kills her with his hook. As Helen reviews the recorded conversation in an empty classroom one night at the university, a cleaning woman overhears the story about Candyman and pays special attention to it. Henrietta Mosley calls in another cleaning woman, Kitty Calver, who tells Helen about the murders that had taken place in Cabrini-Green, Chicago, the low-income housing project where she lives. The people of Cabrini-Green have attributed the deaths to Candyman, as the victims have been butchered with a weapon determined to be a hook. The mention of the murders leads Helen to research in archived newspapers. She finds out the names of the victims. Even more intriguing to her is the fact that her own apartment building was designed exactly like Cabrini-Green. She learns that it was intended as another housing development, but eventually the idea was scrapped when the developers realized that the location was too desirable. Helen is aware that the units in her building are connected to one another through the medicine chest in the bathrooms. When removed, they reveal a small space that links the apartments together. Helen knows that Cabrini-Green's apartments must be the same, and that the stories of Candyman coming through the medicine chest could indicate a human assailant who had also made this discovery. With Bernadette in tow, she visits Cabrini-Green and finds the apartment of one of the murder victims. On the other side of the medicine chest is a strange lair with holes in the walls and elaborate graffiti-style artwork. Helen is fascinated by it, as well as the fact that an altar appears to have been constructed there as well, with candy left behind as an offering. Helen and Bernie meet Anne-Marie McCoy, the neighbor of the deceased victim. Anne-Marie is initially hostile to them, but eventually Anne-Marie softens and invites them into her apartment. Helen is taken by Anne-Marie's baby boy, Anthony, admitting that she would like to have a child of her own one day. While at dinner one night with Bernie and Trevor and a few of Trevor's colleagues, Helen makes a mistake of baiting Phil by mentioning her thesis project. Philip attempts to belittle Helen by telling her that he's already written an essay about Candyman. Philip shares with her Candyman's strange backstory, revealing that he was the son of a slave who had come into a great deal of wealth due to an invention that became hugely successful. Candyman grew up well-schooled and comfortable, and was an artist who was in high demand among the wealthy to paint their portraits. Eventually, Candyman had an affair with the daughters of one of his wealthy white clients, and when she became pregnant, the man exacted a horrible revenge on Candyman. He sent hired goons to attack Candyman, cutting off his right hand and stripping him nude, and smearing him with the honeycomb of a hive of angry bees. He was killed by the numerous bee stings. Philip claims that it all took place on the site where Cabrini-Green now stands. Even more intrigued, Helen returns to the building on her own. When she finds Anne-Marie is not home, she meets a young boy named Jake, who gives her more information. Another death in the project was attributed to Candyman. The brutal castration of a young boy who entered a public bathroom only to meet an attacker who cut off his genitals, resulting in his death. When Jake takes Helen to the site, she goes inside and starts taking photographs. But a group of young men enters after her. One man approaches her and announces that he is Candyman, and he is carrying a large hook, which he uses to beat Helen's face, knocking her unconscious. Later in the police lineup, she identifies her assailant, much to the satisfaction of Detective Frank Valento. Helen meets Jake there at the police station, and she thanks him for his help, explaining that her attacker was human and that Candyman is not real. Bernie surprises her with slides from her camera, which Helen had assumed was a complete write-off after the attack in the man's room. On her way back to the car, Helen looks at her slides, when suddenly she's confronted by a strange figure, a tall black man wearing a long coat and speaking in an unearthly voice. She realizes this is Candyman. Although she can barely comprehend how it is possible, Candyman urges Helen to become his victim. He tells Helen that because she has exposed the real killer at Cabrini-Green, she has caused a sudden rift in his world. The belief in him by hundreds of people is what allows him to go on living. Candyman intends to kill Helen, which would then give rebirth to his legend and cause belief to surge once more. Helen swoons and loses consciousness. When she awakens, she's distorted and realizes that she's somewhere in Anne-Marie's apartment. She's covered in blood, and Anne-Marie is screaming hysterically in another room. A meat cleaver is lying next to Helen, and she picks it up, terrified at what she may find going into the other room. She finds Anne-Marie's dog decapitated, its blood everywhere. Anne-Marie is screaming over the empty crib of her son, who is now missing. Helen strikes her with the cleaver, wounding her shoulder, just as police break through the door of the apartment. Detective Valento appears, this time speaking furiously to Helen. It's clear that everybody thinks she's responsible for the attack and kidnapping of Anne-Marie's child. Her lawyer tells Helen that the prosecutors seem to have released her because they think the child's body will turn up, and they will then charge Helen with first-degree murder, which he thinks is unlikely to stick. The next day, Helen looks more at the slides she took at Cabrini-Green, and in one shot, she's able to see Candyman standing behind her, even though it was not there when she took the shot. He then appears to her once again, emerging from her medicine chest, then seemingly everywhere at once. She's paralyzed with fear, but she hears Bernie knocking at the door to her apartment, carrying flowers, presumably to cheer Helen. Helen tries to scream and warn her, but Bernie enters and is killed by Candyman. Trevor enters the room and watches bloodied Helen, holding a knife, asking him to help her. Helen is taken to an institution and strapped down and injected. But when she's alone, Candyman appears to her again, hovering in the air over her. He tells her that her life is over and that she belongs to him now. Helen is eventually taken to see Dr. Burke, who informs her that he is working for her defense. Helen is astonished to learn that she's been in the facility for an entire month under heavy sedation. When they breach the subject of Candyman, Helen calls for him. Candyman appears and kills Dr. Burke. He levitates through the window and disappears, smashing the glass. Helen uses the window to escape, edging her way to another room and knocking a nurse unconscious, stealing her uniform, and ultimately escaping the hospital. Helen goes home to her apartment and is in for an even greater shock. Trevor has moved his young student in, and they're in the process of completely redecorating the apartment. She tells Trevor he was all she had left in the world, and then she leaves. With nowhere else to go, Helen goes to Cabrini-Green and seeks out Candyman's lair. She finds him asleep and tries to kill him with a hook, but he awakens and tells her to surrender to him. He promises Helen that the pain of her death will be exquisite, as she will be immortal like he is. She realizes through paintings he has done on the walls that she is the image of Candyman's lost love. Wandering outside, she hears the baby crying from somewhere nearby and realizes that Anthony is inside the large pile of scrap wood and garbage. When she goes into the pile to rescue him, Jake awakens and sees her scrambling among the garbage with a hook in her hand. Mistaking her for Candyman, Jake alerts a group of other residents, and together they go outside with gasoline and torches to burn Candyman alive. As the flames spread, Helen reaches the baby inside the bonfire, but Candyman appears to restrain her from escaping. He encourages Helen to stay with him and be burned alive in order to fuel their own legend. Helen fights back, and she manages to crawl out of the fire while protecting baby Anthony. Anne-Marie sees them and is overcome, both by finding her child alive and realizing that Helen was delivering him safely out of the burning wreckage. Badly burned by the fire, Helen dies. At Helen's funeral, Trevor and a few others are the only mourners, until suddenly they look up and see a huge group of residents from Cabrini-Green making their way to her gravesite. Anne-Marie and Jake are at the forefront. After the funeral, Trevor and his new girlfriend Stacy are at the apartment. Trevor has isolated himself in the bathroom, shaking with grief, while the young girl angrily waits in the kitchen, seemingly annoyed that Trevor is grieving the loss of his wife. Sobbing, Trevor looks in the mirror and mumbles Helen's name over and over. Suddenly, Helen appears behind him, a ghostly apparition holding a hook. She uses the hook to murder Trevor, gutting his body and leaving it laying in the tub for his new girlfriend to find. Her own legend has just begun.
What's the matter, Trevor? Scared of something?
My God, Trevor? Trevor? Trevor?
Now it's time to talk horror, and today my guest is DIONNE. Her username is Bonita Blacc, and she does SFX stuff, makeup for TV and film. So what have you been working on, and where can people find you?
I can be found on Instagram, like I said, Bonita Blacc. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook group, Black Women Love Horror Too. Lately, I've just been working on a lot of different films here and there, still trying to build that up.
Yeah. When I first started talking to you, you were like working on a set doing makeup. What were you working on?
That is an upcoming film. I believe it'll be on Tubi and possibly Stars, called A Stranger in My Bed by producer Howard Gibson. He has it's a whole family affair going on. So it's them Gibson's productions.
Is it in the horror genre?
It is not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't get that much stuff in horror as I would like, but I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah. So we are here today to talk about Candyman, the classic 1992 one. I think this is a really heavy movie with a lot of history in it.
It is.
And
Did not
I don't
realize how deep it could get until I looked at your notes.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I like to be thorough in the movies that I cover, and most horror movies are not this deep. But this one really is.
Yes.
So it took me like way longer than I expected, and I know it's like intimidating. So I really appreciate you like sticking with me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah. So we're gonna start with the urban disconnection and erasure of communities. The beginning shot, we get like the God's eye perspective or bird's eye view of Chicago. And in this, we get violence and trauma hidden in plain sight. You see the architecture and perspective has us looking from above or the outside, and buildings are basically characters. You can see which ones are cared for by the city and which ones have been discarded, showing orderly white neighborhoods and segregated Black housing projects. So it like automatically sets it up as like you are looking over this. You are not part of it. You are looking over them. And you see the clear redlining segregation that was happening.
so deep because, we have gentrification everywhere. And I find it kind of disturbing how two identical buildings can be right there, the same exact floor plan. But like you said, one is taken care of and one is abandoned and left for dead, pretty much.
Yeah, Helen's building is an identical building to the Cabrini-Green building that they go into.
Yes.
And so it shows you the potential that that building had, what it could have been had it been nurtured, taken care of, all those things. But instead, it was discarded and just set on the outer limits, the outside of the city. And it's really sad how that happens all the time. So like the buildings end up being like their own character in this because we can see what happens depending on the environment. Yeah, the city is presented as like a divided body. Philip Glass's choral score gives the city like a cathedral-like eeriness, framing the city itself as sacred and cursed, which really sets the tone for like all the urban legends. It's just very like, it's very haunting.
It is.
We get the exterior hallway, staircases, scenes were actually filmed for a few days in the infamous Cabrini-Green housing projects, though the producers had to make a deal with the ruling gang members to put them in the movie as extras to ensure that the cast and crew's safety during filming. I found that really interesting.
Right. I just read that again, and then I watched the movie twice this morning, but that's crazy to me. And then you also put in there how the last day someone still shot at the production van. It lets you know how crazy it can be, especially with the lack of police there in those areas.
Yeah. And thankfully, with that shooting, no one was injured. Cabrini-Green is a prime example of the housing failure, the public housing failure. By the late 20th century, Cabrini-Green became a shorthand for the deterioration and mismanagement and crime that plagued many high-rise public housing projects in the U.S. Its decline was heavily publicized, making it one of the most famous examples of failed urban society engineering. There's just so much to that and how it was already set up for failure.
Unfortunately, I think that's all over America, and even going back to gentrification, how they build up certain areas and they push the Black people out. And also it's interesting, but what we see in real life all the time, but also in your notes, how when Helen she went to Cabrini-Green, and when she was hurt, then of course now the police rush in versus the people who actually live there, the residents, had been calling for help for years and never got that help that they needed.
Yeah, there's this double standard. And that's why whenever she first entered the neighborhood, everyone in there knew like, this is not a good sign. This means trouble for us because if anything happens to this dumb white lady, we're going to be in trouble.
Right. When she should not have been there in the first place. But going back to that savior complex that we spoke about, privileged curiosity.
Yeah.
She didn't care.
The weight of this situation was it just didn't register. Her curiosity outweighed any of the other dangers or the vulnerability that she was putting others in as well.
Correct.
Yeah, like you said, it was racial segregation. Oh, I have some facts about the building. So originally integrated, the complex became predominantly African-American by 1962 due to discriminatory tenant practices and sitting policies. A landmark 1966 lawsuit of, I don't know how to say this, Gautreks versus Chicago Housing Authority successfully challenged these practices, fundamentally altering how future public housing could be built to avoid further segregation. So it took them until 1966 to really address the fact that they were still segregating people. It wasn't being seen as that, but it was segregation. Segregation was supposed to be over, but it never ended.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that it's still going on to this day.
Yeah. I will add that I was a public school teacher for a very long time, and I worked in Title I schools. The one thing that pissed me off the most was this whole like school choice. The parents know best, and like, oh, these are bad schools versus these are good schools. It's always the Black communities and Hispanic communities that are seen as the bad communities. These are the bad schools. We can't send our kids there. That mentality, schools are literally segregated right now based on that. The people who have the flexibility to drop their kids off every morning, pick their kids up every afternoon, they're not the ones that are struggling. They're not the ones that need that extra assistance. They're already the privileged families. And so I saw, working in the school system, the just gross amount of white families that I would like, people that were my friends saying like, oh, well, that school is bad. They're pulling from this neighborhood, XY neighborhood. It just like, I was like, you're all horrible people. You know that? If you were to just let your kid go to the school they were actually assigned to, you would be helping by literally pulling all your kids out. There was one school that my daughter went to, and almost every neighbor that I had in that area had pulled their kid out and put them in like a charter school or a private school. And it's like, you realize that you're creating that situation, right?
Well, that savior complex and the privileged curiosity that's going on. They don't care at all.
And for them, it's all about me. It's very selfish.
As was Helen.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
much. And even Bernadette tried to tell her, no, don't do that. We can't go there. Didn't care. They used Cabrini-Green as an academic stepping stone to get where they needed to be, especially Helen, not so much Bernadette, but she was right there along with her, gathering all those stories for, the data that they needed, not thinking about what more trauma and horror that it would lead to for those residents, which is really sad. She refused to believe what was really going on. She didn't believe in Candyman, even though people were telling her. She didn't want to hear any of that.
Yeah, there's a really important metaphor within that too. This community, though, like the extreme disinvestment caused the crime rates to rise. It was highlighted by incidents like the 1992 shooting of a 7-year-old named Dontrell Davis. That shooting influenced federal policy shifts, including the creation of the HOPE, I hate Roman numerals, I'm going to say that is 6.
It is.
Yeah, program which prioritized demolishing high rises in favor of mixed income developments. I wonder if this movie didn't happen, I wonder if that would have happened.
Probably not. And in my research, I think it was the mayor of Chicago, probably him and other people, a lot of them had a problem with the movie because it was drawing too much negative attention and highlighting, all of the wrong that they have been allowing for so many years. So no, I don't think it would have led to that at all.
Yeah, because that 7-year-old being shot, it happened right after they stopped filming. So it was literally the white savior effect of like this white director is coming in, highlighting what's going on here. And until that happened and they really focused in on it and made it public knowledge by creating this movie, then they had to do something about the fact that this 7-year-old had been murdered. I think it was like a week after shooting had ended.
Our eyes are on them. They had no choice but to pretend like they care for the moment and set some more things in place.
Yeah. And we should always have a mixed income development. It should never be like all the people who are low income here, all the people who are middle class over here. Like it should be a mixture always. And we should be helping each other out always. I don't understand why it's that hard.
This is really deep right here.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I hate to even get into some of that because, yes, they should want to help, but that's just not the reality that we live in. People are usually out for self. There's only a few select people who really care about people who are different from them.
Yeah. And that's what I find the more and more I talk to people. What is the baseline of like why you did what you did or why you believe what you believe? And it's because it doesn't affect you
Exactly.
and you don't care. And it
Mhm.
really makes me mad. The cultural legacy of Cabrini-Green is that the site holds like deep historical value as a cultural hub for thousands of families who built a resilient, self-sufficient community despite government neglect. Its legacy is preserved in pop culture through the sitcom Good Times and horror franchise Candyman, which uses the site to explore themes of urban legends and racial trauma. So, a lot of stuff there.
Yes, we can go on and on about it.
We could.
I think it's very sad. And that's what I didn't realize till now, how much Candyman is real life. Yes, they have him coming out of the mirror with a hook, but everything else in that, down to everything, especially like him just being killed for loving a white woman. How many times has that happened in real life? And it wasn't even always a forbidden love. Sometimes it was a whistle, an innocent glance, or even a lie, like we saw with Emmett Till.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just sad that those are the things that we had to go through.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that Black history in America is Black horror. So many traumatizing things has happened.
100%. And we never got over it. It
No,
never went away.
it did not.
We just ignored it. People got silent about their racist views. And that's why we're seeing a resurgence of, there's a lot of dialogue about whether ICE is more of the Gestapo or the slave catchers.
Mhm.
And I kind of believe that they're both. It's terrifying what's happening in America right now. The racial profiling, the fact that I don't know if you saw, but they just signed an order that like you could go into people's houses without a warrant now.
No, I did not see that.
Yeah.
Is
That's
that
like a
all
new
over?
yeah, I believe so. Let me look it up.
That is crazy. Speaking about going silent, while rewatching the movie, it stuck out to me how little James said, "Oh, I can't speak on Candyman. I'll get hurt." That made me think of how there's so much in Black history that people feel like they can't speak on because something will happen to them if they do. Even more
Yeah.
like the elderly who are more familiar with slavery and segregation and how they purposely leave things out of the history books and out of classrooms.
Yeah.
Also in the movie of, everyone in that neighborhood just afraid to speak on it. And I think you have somewhere in your notes, not to get ahead of you, about acknowledgement, that
Yeah.
horror requires acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ignore it, you can
Mhm.
pretend like it doesn't exist. And that's what we did for a long time.
Into
And
the,
that's why it's crept right back up.
yes, ma'am.
I found it. So there was a new memo from Trump administration memo allows ICE to enter homes without a judicial warrant. And it was signed by a judge. When is it? I don't think that this is going to last long, but he's trying to do this, right? I think that there's going to be actions that are I think this happened like yesterday or the day before. It just happened.
I really hate to hear that. I live in an area right outside of Atlanta, Gwinnett County, that is predominantly Hispanic. So ICE is always around here. So that really scares me. I think I'm getting goosebumps. So what if something like that really happens? Like I would have no neighbors. There would be nobody around if they just went in everybody's home. Not to say everybody's illegal, but still that's not right.
Yeah, but they're not just taking people who are illegal.
They're taking everybody.
Yeah, they're taking people who have legal status and they're still going and taking them.
Mhm.
I'm an abolish ICE person, personally. All right, so the next theme is academic exploration and privileged curiosity. So basically, we're getting now into Helen's research into the urban legends
Mhm.
and the theme I have for this is studying suffering without accountability. And I
Yeah,
think that's the biggest thing is like we can study human suffering, but what are you doing to help?
right.
And for Helen, nothing. She did not intend to help them at all. She only intended to profit and build her career off of Cabrini-Green and the legends there. She did not intend to help them.
That is correct. I mentioned earlier how she just went in there trying to get the data for her thesis, bringing more death and suffering to the Black community, not believing the urban legend, and thought that she could fix the problem by proving that it was all made up.
Yeah. And I don't even know if she thought she could. Well, yeah, she was trying to prove that it was made up, but she kind of accidentally stumbled upon the person that was acting as Candyman within
Right,
the community. Like that wasn't really intentional,
right.
but I know she really patted herself on the back after that.
She did.
She
She thought
did.
she was proving them wrong that, hey, I got attacked by a real man and now he's locked up.
Yeah. So Helen and Bernadette, I really loved Bernadette's character. And of course, she has to become a victim. Like, I really wish she didn't get killed off. But, you know, it's one of those things. It plays into the tropes of the time still.
Yes.
So, Helen and Bernadette have been interviewing numerous people about various urban legend type stories. And one young woman tells them about the story of Candyman, a mythical being who has a hook instead of a right hand. The legend goes that Candyman will appear behind you if you say his name 5 times while looking in the mirror. So, Clara, in the beginning, dares her boyfriend to do this, and he says it 4 times. She says it the fifth. She ends up being murdered in the bathroom. That's the legend that was being spread by most people. That's what people knew. And of course, it kind of makes sense, like with the whole theme of the story, the white woman that died apparently by Candyman, that's the story people know. That's the story that's being spread around. But as we dig deeper, we find other stories that aren't being talked about. It's almost like systemic racism is real.
Almost.
Just a little bit. It's almost like when Black and brown people are murdered, it's less reported on
Of course. But if
and
it's a
investigated.
person, it's all over the place. Every news channel, every newspaper.
As Helen reviews the recorded conversation in an empty classroom one night at the university, a cleaning woman overhears the story about Candyman and pays special attention. It's Henrietta Mosley, and she calls another cleaning woman in, Kitty Calver, who tells Helen about the murders that have taken place in Cabrini-Green, Chicago. Like they live there. That's their reality. They share this information with her about how the victims have been butchered with a weapon determined to be a hook, and just how like the woman had been killed in her apartment because they went through the medicine cabinet.
Mhm.
And my problem with this is that Helen uses the residents' trauma as data, highlighting her use of Cabrini-Green as a subject of academic curiosity, not a lived reality.
Even though they were very kind to her and gave her some information, you can see that look that Kitty gave her friend at the very end, like, why are you in here telling our business? Because she already knew that it was going to lead to other things. Because now Helen is really intrigued and wants to come and get more information. And that she gave a little bit of information, but she was not happy about it. You can tell by the look on her face that that was something that needed to stay in the community to avoid more problems down the line.
Exactly. And I think so many people miss those context clues, like the body language, the way that information is hesitantly given. Kitty is definitely not like she takes a minute before she tells her story. You know, that's an indication that they're worried about protecting their community as well in themselves. So, my next theme is gentrification and displacement. Discovering that Helen's condo mirrors Cabrini-Green. And my theme for this is white comfort built on Black removal. I came up with that. I was very proud of it. Yeah, so we kind of already talked about this, how Helen's apartment building is identical to the one that she visits in Cabrini-Green. And it just really shows what the potential of that community was. But it was abandoned. Had this city cared about the residents, the building had the potential to be exactly the same. There was some controversy that the film was depicting racism and racial stereotypes. According to Bernard Rose, he says, I had to go and have a whole set of meetings with the NAACP because the producers were so worried. And what they said to me when they'd read the script was, why are we even having this meeting? We know this is just good fun. Their argument was, why shouldn't a Black actor be a ghost? Why shouldn't a Black actor play Freddy Krueger or Hannibal Lecter? If you're saying that they can't be, it's really perverse. Okay, so this is a lot to unpack. Basically, the film studios were being racist. It's racist to think that you can't have a Black villain, right?
Yes.
Like, that's the, yeah. He was the first Black serial killer ever depicted on film.
He was.
I find that interesting. We like to villainize people of color, but we don't want to give them the power of actually being a serial killer.
Being the actual killer.
Whenever you're the killer, though, if I really think about it, you're in the position of power instead of a victim. And we like to villainize and victimize, but we don't like to give Black and brown people power. Right. I think that's basically it.
Yeah. When you first say it sounds a little confusing, but that's exactly what it is. Giving a Black man too much power to where he can go around killing people and traumatizing people and getting away with it.
So my next theme is dehumanizing data.
Okay.
So visiting Cabrini-Green as an unwanted guest. And my theme for this is viewing urban communities through a very narrow lens, which she does. And literally, the camera that she uses is that narrow lens. She's literally using a narrow lens to view this entire community, to take pictures of it, to document it.
Right.
It's the camera is a metaphor.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, just like the fact that she's taking snapshots of the community. She's not getting a full story. She's not trying to learn about the people. She's stepping in, she's taking photos, and she's leaving.
Right.
And she's literally looking at it through the lens of a camera.
She didn't even get everything because then she ran out of film.
Yeah.
So she just got bits of pieces, not enough information to really comprehend what's going on here.
No, not at all. While discussing Cabrini-Green, Bernadette tells Helen she heard a kid got shot there the other day. And ironically, on October 13th, 1992, days before the film's release, the little boy, Dontrell Davis, was shot. Oh, it's a stray bullet. In her conversation where Bernadette tells Helen about the shooting, she's like, oh, people get shot there every day. As if like it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
But she wouldn't be saying that if it happened in her own neighborhood.
Correct. It didn't affect her at all because she didn't know these people that were being killed every day.
Yeah. While Bernadette is cautious and understands the implications of coming into the projects dressed in your nicest clothes, Helen ignores all her concerns. She wears a fur coat while walking through the public housing, visually highlighting class separation. It's like a really high anxiety inducing scene when they go into the building for the first time.
When the gang members follow behind them? Yeah, she definitely should have known better than that. And I'm surprised more didn't happen right then. I was expecting it to because until now, I haven't watched this movie in years, but it was unsettling for me to watch her walking in there like that, like she owned the place, knowing that she had no business being there.
Yeah, because of her demeanor, because of the way that she went in there as if someone of authority in something she absolutely knows nothing about. They thought she was a cop.
Mhm.
And because they thought she was a cop, they didn't follow her. And really, she weaponized her whiteness.
Don't we see that often?
Yeah. And she did that. She weaponized her whiteness and her stature because she's like, you know what? I'm the only white woman in here. I am dressed nicely. If they mess with me, even though she knew the double standard was bad, she also knew how to use it.
Of course. She knew that she can make a quick call and people were coming to her rescue if something went bad. Bernadette probably knew the opposite for herself, which is probably another reason why she did not want to go in there, because even though she lives wherever Helen lives amongst these people, she's still Black at the end of the day, and not, get that help as fast as her friend Helen could.
Exactly.
Which is really sad. And it shows it shows me that no matter what your status is, our color is the only thing that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. And these people who think that, by aligning themselves with ICE and, Black and brown community that's aligning themselves with that side, they think it's going to save them. It might delay their response to you, but it's not going to stop it. Residents often view researchers as helicopter or parachute figures who fly in, gather data for their own academic careers, and never provide anything in return. This is a common frustration that research results are never shared with the people who provided the data, and it leaves the community feeling used, which I would feel used if I was that person.
Yeah, I would as well.
Communities often feel that researchers focus exclusively on poverty, crime, and deficiencies rather than the strengths or heterogeneous reality of their lives. This leads to a perception that the researcher's goal is to pathologize the neighborhood, reinforcing negative stereotypes that further isolate the community from mainstream society. And I agree. If you're only giving life to the negative aspects, you're not helping break stereotypes. You're reinforcing them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Helen did and what people do in real life. Go and just focusing on the negative, not even mentioning all of the good qualities about that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
So while Helen is comfortable with this dynamic, Bernadette expresses her discomfort repeatedly. She wants to support her friend, but she's clearly uncomfortable and thinks that they're in a dangerous situation. She also literally says, like, when Helen wants to go into the apartment, she's like, this is disrespectful. I can't remember her actual words, but she's like, we shouldn't be here. A woman died here.
While they were going into the bathroom.
Yeah. Like the fact that Helen was like, you know what, it's fine. No one lives here. We can just go take a picture. There's no one there. She's like, and she kept pushing it further and further. Bernadette was super uncomfortable.
And unfortunately, like we said earlier, how Helen didn't take into account what would happen to anybody else around her. And then her friend ends up dying because she was in places she did not belong. And saying Candyman 5 times in the mirror.
Yeah. I really felt for Bernadette whenever she was left on the other side of the mirror. She didn't go through the whole, she was left with a purse. She was left with everything. Vulnerable. You don't split up. What are you doing? It's like horror movie 101. What the hell are you doing, Helen?
She should have known better.
She should have. So then we meet Anne Marie McCoy, the neighbor of the deceased victim, and Anne Marie is initially hostile to them, which I understood, as she feels the presence of a white person in a Black housing development indicates nothing but trouble. And she's not wrong. But eventually, Anne Marie softens and invites them into her apartment. And I'm thinking too, like, Anne Marie's putting herself at risk by letting these people in.
Yes. We see that in so many movies. You never let an outsider in. You never be the one to speak to the people who don't belong, because something always happens after that.
Yeah, you make yourself a target. Helen's unaware of the position she's putting Anne Marie in when she opens her door to outsiders, while Bernadette shows extra caution. While fear for safety is a concern, she's also concerned about the implications of being friendly to outsiders. And this is like a single mom. And her apartment is so nice. Let's just talk about that really quick. There's graffiti everywhere, but then you go into her apartment, it's really well taken care of.
I wasn't surprised at all.
No.
That part, because I already know, not that I've ever been to a place like that, but I already know that it doesn't matter, what the outside looks like, that a lot of people who live in those type of environments in the projects still keep a nice home inside.
Yeah. And you would never know unless you actually tried to get to know the person. It's like the whole, like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Right. Exactly.
So the next theme is myth as survival and cultural memory. So Candyman legend spreads through Cabrini-Green, and the theme is folklore preserves history when institutions erase it. Helen makes a mistake of baiting Philip, and he tells her the story of Candyman. He was a son of a slave, and he became wealthy through an invention. Then Candyman grew up well-schooled, comfortable. He was an artist who was in high demand among the wealthy to paint their portraits. I think this is going to be a lesson on how, like, the Black and brown community right now think, if they're associated with that side, right, how they think it's going to keep them safe. But Candyman was highly sought after in the white community, and they still went after him.
Yes.
So just because you have proximity, it's not going to keep you safe. I don't know if that's actually a connection or not, but it kind of came to my mind. I don't know. What do you think?
I believe so. But the one thing to me that bothers me about this film as a whole is that he was so obsessed with Helen and all of the Candyman movies, to the point where all of his anger and rage was directed at his own people. That really bothers me, and I don't get that.
Yeah.
But he was just so in love with multiple different white women when that was his demise in the very beginning. I think that's also something that we see in real life, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being interested in someone with another race, but I see often people still just build up real hate for their own kind, people who look like them.
Yes. 100%.
And I didn't think about this before, but since they mentioned that Candyman's father was well off, what did he do? He created shoes after the war or something like that. Candyman himself was a great painter because he went to all the best schools. Now that I think about it, I wonder if he had some type of self-hate for other Black people because, he did live a more privileged life than other people around him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what caused everything that happened afterwards. I never thought about that aspect of this film until right now.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it either, but it makes complete sense. So eventually Candyman had an affair with someone's daughter of one of his wealthy white clients. And when she became pregnant, the man exacted horrible revenge on Candyman. And he hired goons to attack Candyman, cutting off his hand, stripping him nude, smearing him with honeycomb, and having bees attack him. And apparently this happened at Cabrini-Green, where it stands in the movie.
The anger that he had from being killed from the white people, he still pointed his anger right back at his own people.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting. You would think that he would go after the descendants of the people who actually killed him, or at least looked like them.
The name Candyman is not spoken lightly by residents. And with Bernadette, this is shown when Helen pressures her into saying Candyman 5 times into the mirror. Bernadette stops at the 4th time, while Helen repeats it all 5 times, further emphasizing Helen's dismissal of what Candyman represents. He exists through collective belief, not documentation, making him an urban legend. Stories contradict each other, emphasizing oral tradition. But there are patterns with the stories that connect them, like a hook is always used as the weapon, and the first person that finds the victim, their hair turns white. And of course, the bees, too. There's always bees.
Yes.
I thought this was really interesting that originally in the script, Candyman's name was supposed to be called 13 times. That's a lot.
It is. But that would have been obsessive.
It's like an urban legend itself. The number 13 is supposed to be like bad luck. And so it made sense that they would have picked 13, but also, yeah, no one's sitting there saying someone's name 13 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
I'm surprised they didn't go with 6 instead of 5, because 6 doesn't, 666 is kind of.
I guess they were like, if it's on one hand, let's keep it within that range.
Mm-hmm.
In the short story, the character described his state of existence as an urban legend. I am rumor. I am a blessed condition, believe me. To live in someone's dreams, to be whispered at street corners, but not to have to be. While the film version said, I'm the writing on the walls, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. That's such a powerful line.
It is.
The way Tony Todd delivered it too is so creepy.
Mm-hmm. And so then I'm guessing he said that because after Helen with the man who's pretending to be Candyman, so that kind of made people not believe, oh, it was a real man the whole time. So now Candyman has to go on to continue killing because he needs people to believe in him. Helen messed that up.
Yeah. I guess some viewers found Candyman's appearance to be ridiculous because like it was blaxploitation with like the pimp's outfit. And I don't disagree. The coat is, it's a bit much.
It is.
It's just like, I don't know what else could he have worn?
I don't know. I wonder why they chose that, but I didn't think about that until I read your notes, but he does look like a pimp.
Yeah.
Does he have a hat too? That's all he's missing is the pimp hat.
Yeah. And like they stripped him, right? And they did the bees and all this stuff. So like he should have just been stripped.
Yeah. So where'd he get that coat from?
The Candyman's lair resembles a decaying, molded church, and he sleeps on a concrete bed reminiscent of an altar. He is being summoned. Like every time someone says Candyman 5 times, they're summoning him.
That makes sense.
So that would be like the ritual. Why is he named Candyman? I guess because honey is made into candy.
Yeah, that's the part when he's being killed, when they're first putting the honey on him and the bees are coming, the little boy just randomly says, they say something about sweet like candy, Candyman.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Mm-hmm.
I need to rewatch that. So the next theme is racialized violence and lynching. Candyman's origin story, America's original horror. So really, Candyman is it's your average American horror story. Candyman was a Black artist killed for loving a white woman. Viewers may think of Candyman as one of horror genre's most terrifying villains, but Bernard Rose said that the idea was always that he was kind of a romantic figure, romantic in sort of the Edgar Allan Poe sense. It's the romance of death. He's a ghost, and he is also the resurrection of something that is kind of unspoken or unspeakable in American history, which is slavery as well. So he's kind of come back and he's haunting what is the new version of racial segregation in Chicago. And I think there's also something very seductive and very sweet and very romantic about him. And that's what makes him interesting. In the same way, there is about Dracula. In the end, the boogeyman is someone you want to surrender to. you're not just afraid of. There's a certain kind of joy in his seduction. And Tony Todd was always so romantic. Tony ties him in so elegantly and is such a gentleman. He was wonderful. So that's all from Bernard Rose, the director.
This does make you want to go back and watch the movie
A third time for the day. It's the same day.
because there's just so much that I feel like, well, maybe I didn't catch that part.
I don't think Candyman is necessarily the villain here. I think he's a victim. He ends up being a villain and acting out his trauma.
I definitely agree with that. I feel this film was made in a way to almost shift the idea of Black people, specifically a Black man, being monstrous. You know, like exploring how the systems of power or whiteness could actually be the true source of power.
Yeah, that's what harmed him. But like, he's also trying to get his power back through the folklore and legends.
Right. If they let him be with her versus killing him and chopping off his arm, none of this would have ever happened.
Yeah. And honestly, like, he is right to be like, I have to be something that's remembered through fear, because if it wasn't for the fact that people have that urban legend and say his name, he would have been forgotten about the day he died.
That's so sad.
After that. Yeah. It's sad that Candyman had to turn into a monster to be remembered. So Tony Todd came up with the character's backstory actually during rehearsals with Virginia Madsen. Todd designed the character Granville T. Candyman, who had a forbidden and interracial love affair with a white woman whose portrait he paints, leading to his fatal lynching by an angry mob. The name of Granville is never used in the first film. I thought that was really cool that like Tony Todd came up with that backstory.
Too bad they didn't use it. Or did they use it in the following films?
I think they do use his first name in the following films, but just like the fact that he had the love affair, I think that was all his idea. So they did use the love affair.
That definitely added so much more to the story that we're even able to talk about it right now. And it's probably something that he, I would assume, probably went through in real life, maybe being in love with someone that he couldn't be with.
Yeah, and in here I have the fact that biracial relationships became legal across the entire United States on June 12th, 1967. 20 years before I was born. So 20 years before I was born, interracial relationships were not legal. People need to really sit with these statistics and sit with like the facts of American history. We don't pay attention to when things actually started to get better for people. And it hasn't been that long.
Not long at all. And they try to trick our minds into thinking that things were so long ago. On MLK Day, which was just a few days ago, I saw them saying, don't let those black and white photos fool you.
Yeah, because there were colored photos too.
There was, but that's all that we see, or that's all that we're shown, especially like in our textbooks at school, are black and white, making you think, oh, that was so long ago. We don't have to worry about that. But no, that was just the other day.
It's all intentional. It's about making a perception. What are we going to correlate black and white with? Not now times.
Nope.
Basically, the violence that created Candyman is not mythical. It's predictable. As American as apple pie. I put that. I was like, yes, it is. Helen became a symbol of what he lost, and she's the only one trying to erase him from the community's memory. How ironic is that?
It's crazy.
When I realized that, I was like, oh, wow. The one woman that represents his love looks like the person who got him killed to begin with is now trying to erase his memory. Stupid bitch. According to Tony Todd, the studio cut several minutes of footage out to the swirling embrace scene at the end of the film when Candyman tells Helen, surrender to me, because they were leery of interracial context of the scene.
I mean, isn't that what the movie's based on, or how the whole story started? But they
Yeah.
still didn't want to show, they still didn't want to show any of that
Yeah.
in 1992.
Yeah. So gutting people, showing a kid with his genitals cut off in a bathroom, blood everywhere, showing feces on a wall, showing mutilated bodies, all of that, fine. But
Mhm.
you know what? We need to cut out some of this interracial relationship stuff, like the pictures, like of them together. Like that's too far.
Whew.
So the next theme I have in here is the mirror as witness. So the say my name motif, horror requires acknowledgement. If
Mhm.
we don't acknowledge it, like we are not in American history, we are not acknowledging the horrors that have caused us to get where we are. And that's why so many people are shocked that we are where we are, because the American education system has hid their true history of what's happened and they don't acknowledge it. I find the mirror really interesting in folklore in general. This is so much deeper than people think with movements like Black Lives Matter, where saying someone's name is key in remembering what happened to them. Like this saying that person's name, saying Candyman's name, that whole part of summoning and remembering,
Mhm.
it's something that through these movements of trying to remember people like George Floyd and so many others, that has become a mantra. Say my name.
I'm trying to think of the other woman's name, Sandra. But yes, her and George Floyd were big in those say my name type people because they want us to forget. We have to make sure that their names are repeated constantly because we're not going to forget.
Like there was some controversy too, which I completely understood. And I was like, you know, it should be respected with people like saying that, you know, with Renee Good, the say my name was being co-opted for a white woman. And it was. And I'm not saying anything negative about acknowledging her. And it was horrible what happened to her. But no one has to be reminded to say her name. We
Right.
have to be reminded to say the other victims' names.
That also plays on the whole all lives matter type situation that people had going on. And it was crazy the fact that they didn't realize that, you know, we never said that all lives didn't matter or that white lives don't matter. We're just trying to make sure y'all know that Black lives matter also.
Yeah. Okay. So mirrors appear in bathrooms and private spaces of vulnerability. The belief that mirrors can trap souls is a widespread superstition with roots in ancient civilizations, generally originating from the idea that a reflection is not just an image, but a person's actual soul or essence. So I thought that was really interesting. Like in the Victorian era, mirrors were draped with black cloth to prevent the deceased spirit from becoming confused or trapped in the house rather than moving on to the afterlife. So I found that all really interesting.
That is very true. And I
Do you
think
have any of those kinds of beliefs?
I do not. We do not drape mirrors or anything like that. The only thing I can think of that is kind of close is like opening a window, like if someone passes away in the home. And me and my mother, we work as caregivers. So I know we've done that recently when we're with an elderly person who passes away. We do make sure we open the window or open a nearby door so their spirit is not trapped inside.
Okay, I have heard of that. So at one point, Helen attempts to debunk the legend of Candyman to young Jake by telling him he's just a story, you know, like Dracula or Frankenstein. And choosing these particular characters as examples of just a story is ominous, in that both Dracula and Frankenstein were inspired by real life historical figures. So, yeah, just not good vibes all around there. And Candyman exists because society refuses to look directly at its own violence. Now, my next theme is the white savior delusion and Helen's fixation on solving Cabrini-Green's problem, centering whiteness in Black suffering. So Helen's white audacity leads her to ignore warnings from residents like the young boy Jake, directly resulting in violence that primarily impacts the Black community. Her desire to prove her intellectual worth leads her to bring her Black friend, Bernadette, into a dangerous space. Critics point out that while Helen survives as a martyr, Bernadette is killed off as a sidekick, reinforcing the trope that Black lives are disposable in the pursuit of white self-discovery.
I found it really interesting at the end of the movie for Helen's funeral, how Anne Marie and the rest of her community came marching in almost like to show their respect. I'm sure she was thankful that, Helen saved her baby, but then the fact that it was still Helen's fault that caused that to happen, and then how they had Helen's portrait up where Candyman's used to be.
Yeah.
They uplifted her as a savior, which was crazy to me because she caused all of that.
And it just kind of erased him. She repeatedly dismissed the residents' very real fears of the Candyman as mere coping mechanisms for urban violence, effectively gaslighting and marginalizing community until the threat begins to affect her personally, which we see happening in society all over, and it's being publicized. Right now, I think it's that part, like the gaslighting and marginalized communities, we're seeing it a lot. Her actions unintentionally cause more harm, and Helen's savior complex allows Candyman to co-opt her identity. I put a personal note in here that, like, I know that the Black community doesn't need me, but the white and Hispanic communities need me to point out their bullshit because they won't listen to Black voices on these topics. But when I say it, they might listen to me. So I need the Black community to help me learn how to grow as a person. That's basically it, like how I saw it.
I get it. It makes perfect sense.
While there are parts, especially as a teacher, like that was very much my goal. Like, I want to be in a Title I school. I want to be a voice for these kids. These kids need to be believed in. I also know that I am only a small piece in a very large puzzle where Helen had this self-importance about her, as if she was the only one that can do it. I know that I'm not the only one that can do whatever I do.
Was it ever addressed in your research or in the sequels, the fact that Helen did take over Candyman's role?
I don't think so. Not in that way. Not in that way of like really acknowledging the erasure of Candyman as a symbol of fear and putting herself in that place. I think it's a sign of, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was one of those things where that was a norm and people didn't realize, like Bernard Rose, whenever he was actually faced with criticism about that, I think he didn't realize that he was unintentionally reinforcing these stereotypes. And while he had good intentions of, trying to highlight the racism and the way that these communities are mistreated and segregated, no matter what he did, he is a white man writing a story about a Black and brown community. He was never going to get it right.
So he tried.
Yeah.
He just missed the mark in certain places.
The next thing I have here is patriarchy, control, and male violence. Candyman frames his violence as love. Even dead men are misogynists. He kidnaps a baby to force Helen's compliance. He tells her she will be immortal through him, which is some Dracula shit. Like, as a woman, I definitely, whenever he's like, you belong to me or whatever, it's like, there's definitely a part of me that's like,
Yeah, that's crazy. Because how's he just going to say, you belong to me, be mine, come be immortal with me? She doesn't want to, sir.
Yeah, like, it's so misogynistic. Misogyny. A lot of the hate that I get online and stuff is more to do with misogyny than it is anything else.
I believe you. And I haven't been following you this long, but I've seen some of the crap that you have to go through. And I even had to tell myself, like, okay, DIONNE, are you ready for this? Especially at this point, some people may automatically look at whatever you do as controversial now. So I feel like someone's gonna have something to say, but it's okay. I'm here with you, girl.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. I know that like at this point, I'm a controversial figure. I hate to say it, but anyone that kind of aligns themselves with me, hopefully it doesn't put a mark on them. But and I'm hoping that I can completely change that narrative as I keep pushing on. And I'm just that kind of stigma can stick if you're silent. But if you're not silent, just like Candyman saying his name a bunch of times, that's the way you're able to fight that. I'm not going to be silent.
I love it, to be honest. And even going through while I was typing my notes earlier, I have an older cousin who's in education, and she talks a lot openly online about racist teachers and all that. So while I'm typing doing my notes, I was thinking, oh, she's gonna be proud of me.
Aw.
She's gonna love this.
Yeah. Good.
There's a lot of, speaking up, not being quiet just because of what others may feel.
Yeah. Fuck your feelings. That's what I say. And people don't want to hear it because I'm a woman. And honestly, it's like people like you where I can talk to you and I care about other people who are pursuing the same kinds of knowledge and like doing better. I don't want them to like me, honestly. Like if I'm making them happy, if I'm appeasing them, I'm doing something wrong, right? Like that's how I feel about it. Like I don't want to appease like the enemy. Fuck the enemy. I am not trying to be a middle of the road person. I'm trying to stand for something. So, okay, martyrdom and sacrifice. So the bonfire scene in Cabrini-Green, we have redemption requires self-immolation. Helen sacrifices herself to save the baby. Helen dies violently but meaningfully. And she doesn't give into his terms, which I was very much like, yes, Helen, don't let this misogynist tell you have to burn with him in the fire. Go save that baby. And, so she does it on her own terms. She takes the baby and delivers it to the mother, who is very grateful. And I think, she had been in the psych ward for over a month. So it was, I think at that point, it was really clear that like she didn't take the baby because if she did, how is it still alive?
Right. I didn't realize it had been that long, like a month or so.
They like kept her heavily sedated and then like it basically feels like the next day, but the psychiatrist that's like also part of her defense is like, you've been here for 30 days.
Wow. And that made sense since her husband already moved another woman in.
Yeah. And then they're painting the apartment some Pepto-Bismol.
Right.
Like Helen was too nice.
Yes.
She gets her revenge in the end, but I was just like, why the fuck are you painting those walls pink?
I wish they would have showed us killing the other woman also. We didn't get to see that.
So basically her death allows Candyman's reign to end temporarily. Sacrifice is the only currency myth respects. Almost. Okay, so I have like myth transference. Helen becomes the new legend and violence is inherited. So Helen's funeral is sparsely attended until all the Cabrini-Green residents come in. And then Candyman is replaced by her image, like you had mentioned. And really whitewashing the myth. In the film's conclusion, Helen dies saving the Black baby and is subsequently honored as a savior in the Cabrini-Green community, like you had mentioned. By the final scene, murals of Candyman are literally and figuratively painted over with Helen's image. She effectively gentrifies the legend, taking over the space and the narrative of the original victim, Candyman. Horror never ends. It just changes names. And this cycle of belief and violence continues. And the last thing is like memory over justice. America prefers ghosts to accountability. And Helen is now invoked as a legend. Candyman's story persists in altered form. No structural change occurs. Myth replaces justice. Remembering is not the same as repairing.
Because now there's just a new legend to be afraid of. It didn't ultimately fix the problem.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Now the problem is just whitewashed.
Yep. And now it's a focus on a white woman and her death instead of acknowledging the man that was murdered. If anything, I know that wasn't Bernard Rose's intention, but it's more realistic actually, because that's what happens.
It is much more realistic.
Yeah, the 2021 sequel, directed by Nia DaCosta, explicitly critiques Helen's role, reclaiming the perspective. It shifts the focus from the white academic outsider to Black residents and artists, reframing the legend as a collective response to systemic police brutality rather than a love story for a white woman. We get the de-gentrification in the new film seeks to give back the story to the Black community, moving away from Helen's perspective entirely, which is why that movie, while they're both important, I think that movie is better.
Yeah, I would say so myself, because as I stated earlier, my only issue with this movie is that he did all that over her. So I'm definitely gonna rewatch the sequel.
The 2021 one is also really good, just like the kill scenes are better. Nia DaCosta did a really good job with that one. And then it's like Jordan Peele was the producer, I believe. I loved it. I thought it was great. Thank you so much. And we'll keep in touch.
Okay, have a good day.
You too. Bye. Let's end on a high note. Weekly horror update. Return to Silent Hill, directed by Christoph Gans. This adaptation of the second game in the franchise is scheduled for January 23rd. Scream 7 is set for February 27th. The sequel marks Neve Campbell's return as Sidney Prescott and the directorial debut of franchise creator Kevin Williamson. New Frankenstein movie, The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, is a reimagining of Frankenstein, starring Christian Bale and Jessie Buckley. And that is going to be in theaters on March 6th. So we have a lot of horror stuff coming out. We have a lot of movies. This is definitely a packed year for horror, which is always a sign of the times. So for streaming, Mother of Flies is a dark supernatural tale about a young woman seeking a cure from a witch. This is debuting on January 23rd on Shudder. We also have on Shudder is going to be Beast of War, a deep sea horror thriller involving a massive shark-like creature stalking soldiers. Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting mashup of things on Shudder. Self-Help is a new horror movie from the director of Founders Day. This cult-themed horror movie is on Screambox as of earlier this month. Sadly, 28 years later, The Bone Temple has not done well in theaters, which is very disappointing. But on the plus side, it's still getting rave reviews from both critics and audiences all over. The Mike Flanagan reboot of The Exorcist was planned for 2026, and that has now been pushed back to March 12th of 2027. Not sure exactly why that happened, but that is the latest news on The Exorcist. As of now, I'm doing 2 episodes on my theme of the month and 2 episodes of indie horror highlights. Next month, I'm super excited about my guests. I am covering Good for Her horror with women's revenge slashers, pretty much. And I'm excited for it. It's definitely my theme, is something that I am passionate about, that subgenre of horror. So like strap in for an uncomfortable time and a lot of deep discussions about feminism in horror. If you are an indie horror director, writer, producer, any of those things, and you would like to talk to me about your movie, email me at screamqueenpodcaster@gmail.com. And I would love to get with you and try to work something out. my schedule's kind of pick up. It might be a little bit a ways away, but I do really want to talk to people that have indie horror movies. I feel bad because there's so many amazing movies out there. There are so many creative, talented indie horror directors and writers. And because I'm only one person and I do everything on my own, I can only do so many interviews. But I really have been enjoying this part. I've really enjoyed this transition into also interviewing people within the horror industry because it is such a fun, creative place to be in. The community really is very supportive and open-minded in general. But like any community, there are going to be problems here and there. If you know, you know. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So this is a weekly podcast with episodes out every Friday. All the research, writing, and audio is done by yours truly. This is a one-woman show, and I am doing my very best. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. It really means a lot. You can find me on Instagram at Scream Queen Podcaster, Blue Sky at Scream Queen Podcast, TikTok at Scream Queen Podcast, and there's a link tree that will take you to my YouTube and Facebook page as well. Remember, the truth is much scarier than the urban legend. Until next time, goodbye.